Do you ever sit and wonder about how much easier life would be if you could just get out of your own way? How we sort of know what we need to do and how to do it, but we just never do it. Or maybe we give a friend some great advice and then we think to ourselves, man, I should really do that myself and maybe take my own advice for once. But of course, we never do and we never change and our lives never improve. This is because of the little lies we tell ourselves, the subtle excuses we make in our minds to get out or around doing the things we need to do. That's what we're going to focus on today, the 8 excuses serious photographers and creatives need to stop making. Plus, at the end, we'll talk about some healthier alternatives we can say instead. I'll frame it in the context of creativity and photography, but just know that this can apply to any and everything in your life. Some of these might be tough pills to swallow, but they'll make us better. Let's begin. Excuse number 1, if I had. An all too common problem of many creatives is blaming their gear. This is especially true in photography, but you'll see it in other disciplines as well. Photographers will say things like, if I had the same gear as this person, I'd take just as good photos. Or, did you see the new Sony, Fuji, Canon, whatever, blah blah blah? It's a game changer. I need it. Some of this is simply gear acquisition syndrome, trying to justify a purchase. But a lot of it is just making excuses and trying to cover up the real reason for your crappy photos. That being, you just suck. You see, it's not a gear issue, it's a skill issue. And if you were truly good enough, it wouldn't matter what gear you'd use, you'd still make great art. For example, many of the great artists of the past had worse tools to work with than you. Did you know that back in the day, blue paint was ridiculously expensive to get? During the Renaissance, blue paint was obtained from a rare and expensive stone, lapis lazuli. Its high cost made it so that it was only used for elites and the royalty, which also meant that many paintings that required blue were sometimes left unfinished. And yet nowadays, blue paint, blue ink, blue colored pencils are available at nearly every hobby store near us. And our digital devices allow us to work in nearly any color imaginable. So chances are you do have good enough gear to make what you want. Because the artists of the Renaissance had worse, and they still made better stuff than you. So although you're probably sick and tired of people saying things like, a good photographer can take a good photo with a crappy camera, there's some truth to it. And you can blame the gear all you want, it's not going to make you take better photos. This new feature might help a bit, but I'm willing to bet that once that camera becomes outdated and newer, better ones come out, you'll be saying the exact same thing. So stop saying, if I had. Stop making the excuse that you don't have what you need to make good art. It'll only give control of your art to externalities like objects and the outside world. And no matter how good you actually are, you'll keep blaming these externalities. Or if you actually want to get better, it means taking control of that for yourself and taking responsibility for your creativity. That's the point of creativity after all, making something, not acquiring all the fancy tools. Excuse number 2, I can't or I don't know how. Another bad excuse to make as a creative is, I can't, I wish I could, I don't know how. Because although on the surface it seems harmless, it's still an excuse nonetheless. When we say, I don't know how to do something, we're admitting to our skill deficit, yes. But we typically don't follow up that phrase with anything more. There's no action to improve that skill deficit. Plus, in the real world, admitting to these inadequacies often gets you a pass. Oh, why don't you do this? I can't, I don't know how. Oh. And then the conversation kind of ends there. It's taken as kind of a humble, honest statement because he's not being cocky or arrogant. This person is admitting a deficit, which in turn feels more acceptable. But it's still an excuse nonetheless, and nothing comes from it. And just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean you can't learn. So the follow-up question to ask yourself is, so I don't know how to. Now what? Am I just not going to do anything about it because I don't know how to? If you can't tell, the reason why we say this I don't know how to statement is to get out of doing the thing. Because the underlying reality is that we don't want to learn and we don't want to change. Because if we actually did, we'd say things like, I don't know how to, but I'll learn, right? Maybe you don't know how to shoot manual, but you can Google it and learn. Maybe you don't know how to edit photos well. You can watch some tutorials and learn. Those are the actual responses of someone who is willing and wants to learn. And without this addendum, it's actually just another excuse. Because deep down, you know you can learn even if you currently don't know how to. And deep down, you know you're just saying that because you're avoiding the work of change and improvement. So it's tricky. We have to be careful with the words we use. And it's important to catch ourselves when we say these things because they can really hold us back and lead us to believing we're inadequate. I can't isn't a fact, it's a belief. And beliefs can be changed. You can, you just haven't learned how to, right? Excuse number 3, they're lucky, I'm not. You'll see and hear different versions of this all over the internet. They're lucky and therefore I'm not. That person was born with some unfair advantage like rich parents that I don't have, so that's why they're successful and I'm not. They've got connections and that's why their prints sell and mine don't. Which is why I'm exempt from doing anything or trying anything to improve my current situation, chase my dreams, whatever, because I'm just an unlucky person. It's similar to the if I had that gear excuse. It's a form of self-pity that really doesn't make any sense at all because who cares? Who cares if that person has something that you don't? Who cares if they were born into money and you weren't? Who cares if they got the connections that got them into doors that you can't get into? The world doesn't care and the people who buy your work don't care. Only you care because you've chosen to see this thing as something that's holding you back. Think about it for a second. Them having some unfair advantage doesn't change your current circumstances. It may be true in the literal sense, this advantage has helped or allowed them to succeed. But how does that affect you and what you do? You're still going to have to get up in the morning, do the thing, and work to make your life happen. This is the hand you were dealt. And you can either choose to play it as best as you can or fold from the get-go by wallowing in your own self-misery. Which is like choosing to lose from the start simply because you didn't draw a hand of pocket aces in poker. It's silly. Furthermore, understand that if you're in any capacity to worry about things like creativity and photography, you've got it pretty good. Photography and creativity are luxuries that 99% of the world can't afford. So remind yourself of that. Who cares about what they have and what you don't have? It's not a good excuse. Plus, if these are the problems you're worried about, you're probably much luckier than you think. Excuse number 4. This person doesn't, so I shouldn't. Sometimes you'll hear the excuse, well, so-and-so doesn't do that, almost implying that this person doesn't, so I don't have to either. This famous photographer doesn't take photos in that way, so I shouldn't either. This guy doesn't like that lens, so I'm not going to use it. This can also apply to practicing more, working harder, and even giving up stuff like drugs and alcohol. The list goes on. And people will use famous and successful people to leverage this point. But really, this argument and this excuse falls apart when you point out they're not that person. So maybe this famous person doesn't practice every day. You're not that person. Maybe this person got successful and got to where they are without taking things very seriously. You're not that person. And trying to use their life as an excuse for how you should live your life doesn't always work. It's important, yes, to take inferences from role models and people we look up to for inspiration, but you've got to be careful with this. Because there's a difference between saying, this person did this, what an inspiration, and this person didn't do this, so I don't have to either. One views this thing as inspiration and permission to go down this path and aim higher, while the other one uses it as kind of an excuse to get out of the work. So it's tricky, and you have to be careful not to lie to yourself. It's highly unlikely you'll be able to get away with the same stuff Leonardo da Vinci got away with because you're not da Vinci. And just replace da Vinci with any artist that comes to mind. And thinking you can will only lead you to taking shortcuts, cutting corners, working less hard, and overall, creating worse work. So this excuse just harms you in the long run. It leads to less effort, less productivity, and more fucking around. So get it out of your head. You are not that person. And it's much better to assume you don't have the leeway or special talents that these other artists have, so you have to take action, put in the hard work, build the good habits, and profit from it. Make sense? Excuse number 5. I'm lazy, not feeling it, not motivated, not inspired. This one drives me up the wall. It's perhaps the most used, most infuriating, and most silly excuse out there. I'm lazy, I'm not feeling it, I'm not motivated or inspired right now. And of course, I'll do it tomorrow. People say these things like it's okay, and people use it for everything. Why aren't you working on the project, painting the thing you said you were gonna, cleaning your room? Oh, I'm too lazy. Proceeds to scroll on their phone, right? So let's think about this rationally. Lazy and all these other excuses aren't good ones because we all feel lazy and we're probably always going to feel lazy. And we can always use lazy as an excuse whenever we have to do something. So this kind of works in our mind in such a way that we'll never not feel lazy. And the realization we have to come to is that who cares if you're lazy, right? Seriously. Who cares? Even if you're lazy, you can still clean your room. Even if you're lazy, you can still work on that photography project. Even if you're lazy, you can still do something. And how lazy you are doesn't matter, and it's just not a clever excuse. For example, imagine if your boss asked you to do something and you said, I'm not feeling it right now, I'm lazy. It's like, you better start feeling it right now or you're not getting paid, right? Or maybe your kitchen's on fire and you're too lazy to put the fire out. In that moment, it doesn't matter how you feel. Either you do something about it or your house burns down and you go with it. And being lazy in that situation is just ridiculous. So we should treat that phrase with the same kind of scrutiny whenever we try to use it. It doesn't matter what you're feeling because you can still do it regardless. And this applies for all the alternative phrases like, I'm not feeling it today. I'm not very motivated right now. I don't have the inspiration. These sort of things trick us into thinking that this feeling is temporary, and then tomorrow we'll all of a sudden feel motivated or inspired to do the work. But what if tomorrow never comes? And what if tomorrow does come, but you're also lazy then? Because let's be honest, you probably will be. So understand this cycle, it's a trap, and it's just your brain tricking you. And it's the reason why you have all these awesome ideas about doing all these awesome things, and then you never do anything about it. Lazy, not feeling it, not motivated, not inspired, they're all bad excuses. Cut them out of your vocabulary today, get outside, and start taking some photos. Excuse number 6, there's no point, so why do anything? This is probably the favorite phrase of the pessimistic or nihilistic creative or photographer. Why do it? What's the point? None of it matters anyways. And the problem is, they're not wrong. It's true. None of it actually matters. Because if you zoom out far enough, there really isn't any point. Anything and everything you will make will eventually be forgotten, even your little photo book. Especially your little photo book. And you're just a tiny insignificant little ant on a speck of dust that exists for a blip of time in an infinite universe. So really, what's the point? Even the works of famous or great artists like Da Vinci or Van Gogh will eventually be forgotten. Don't believe me? Wait 1,000 years. I bet back in human history there was a famous and renowned cave painter who is known throughout all the lands for their scribbles, who no one knows or cares about now. The same will be for any and everything made today. So the "there's no point" argument isn't wrong, but it also doesn't help us become more creative, productive, and live a more fulfilling life. Because the end action of that phrase is to always do nothing. It's simply a negative interpretation of a truth of the world, but there's a positive interpretation of that truth as well. Let's explore that. Think about it like this. Everything fades and nothing matters, right? Those are just the facts. But what are the conclusions we draw from these facts? The pessimistic or nihilistic artist will conclude, if everything fades and nothing matters, there's no point to doing anything, so I won't. Whereas the mature or optimistic artist will conclude, well, if nothing matters anyways, then I'm free to create and make whatever I want. Same evidence, two completely different conclusions, right? The point is, we get to choose. We get to choose the conclusion we make from the evidence we've gotten from the world. And if you want to lie around and lay down scrolling on your phone all day and never do anything with the talent and artistic vision you have, that's your choice. I think you're just going to have to come up with a better excuse than there's no point. Because there is a point, you've just chosen the other route. There's a great quote I'm reminded of in this moment. If there's no reason to do, there's no reason not to do. Those who pick the do nothing route have done so because they're lazy. And it's a convenient and easy justification to save them the effort of creativity by saying there's no point. But those who understand what it actually means unlock a creative freedom that allows them to do any and everything they want, unhindered by the excuses of irrelevancy. Because if you need there to be a point for you to pursue your art, that means you were in it for the benefits. But those were never the point to begin with. The point of art is to make art. That's all. Understand this and you'll finally be free to create. Because if there's no reason to do, there's no reason not to do. Excuse number 7, it's not realistic. This applies to the more career side of art. Say you want to make money or a living off of what you enjoy. Maybe you have an underlying passion for something but always kept it hidden because it's not realistic. And sometimes you think back to your childhood and remember the things you enjoyed the most. It could be playing sports, drawing, painting, playing music, photography, whatever. And upon doing these things, you immerse yourself and lost track of time. It's when you felt the most alive and got the most excited about life. Deep down, you know you want to do this thing but kept shutting it out because it's not realistic. The first thing you have to understand is, it is realistic. You can make a career off your art, especially in this day and age. Just give it a second and think about all the people you look up to in your respective discipline. They're living in the same time era as you and they've done it, which means you can too. Furthermore, think about all the changes in technology and social media. We've explored this a little in other creative videos, but this isn't the 1800s. This isn't the 1900s, this is the 2000s. Maybe back then it was irrelevant and impractical to pursue art or photography as a career because things were different then. But guess what? People still did it. And nowadays with social media and technology, it's more possible than ever to create a career talking about and doing what you love. It doesn't mean that everyone has to turn their creativity into a career, I'm just saying it's possible. The second thing to understand is that voice is not you. The excuse, it's not realistic, was planted into your brain by someone else. It could be your parents, it could be your society, it could be your past art teachers. Maybe there are people who are looking out for you and don't want to see you suffer by going down this path. But people who've also failed at their dreams will say things like this, as sort of a means to disincentivize other young artists not to try. These voices are all playing back and forth within your head and you're simply reciprocating it. So whenever anyone asks you, what do you like? What do you enjoy doing? What do you want to do with your life? You'll say things like, well, I really like photography, but just as a hobby because it's not realistic. And even typing that out and saying that to myself or out loud makes my stomach and chest hurt. Because I used to be like that. Back in elementary school, if you'd asked me about anything creative like photography, music, art, drawing, writing, the first thing that would come to my mind would be, oh, but that doesn't really make money. And I wasn't wrong per se, but what's an elementary kid doing thinking about money? Right? And it was only after time had passed that I realized that I got that response from somewhere else. I wasn't born with it, and I'd probably acquired it from somewhere like my parents because we were very money conscious at the time, reasonably so. But if I think back to what I was good at, what I enjoyed the most, what I felt more natural doing as a kid, it was always reading, writing, and drawing, and maybe running around the playground chasing a basketball. So fast forward many years later, and my life has ironically come full circle. A lot of the work I do now is writing and visual arts based. If you feel like you're on the precipice of making a big career decision, I'd think about this. Forget about the "it's not realistic" thing, because there are plenty of examples of people like you who've made it work. Your favorite musicians, artists, writers have all had a period of struggle, and overcoming these challenges have allowed them to make a career out of what they love. So it is possible. Plus, there's a whole entire industry of people doing art for a living that aren't necessarily in the limelight. People like background artists, producers, etc. There are plenty of options at your disposal. Maybe you just haven't learned about them yet. So forget about it being realistic or not realistic and just think about this. What is the thing you enjoy the most? What makes you feel alive? What is something you really enjoyed as a kid but have somehow lost because of life and growing up? And what would you do if you could? Like, truly could. Stop saying it's not realistic and think about that. Excuse number 8. It's too hard. By now you've probably seen a trend within all these excuses. They're all partial truths that try to squeeze us out of doing the work. And there's an element of ego to them, but also an element of self-pity. It's too hard. Why do people say this? They use it because, like other excuses, they want a reason not to try. People are lazy. That's the biggest takeaway. They're lazy and they'll say any and everything to get out of doing the work. Even bullshit like, it's too hard. Let's play this one out. Okay, say it's too hard. Now what? What does that even mean? It's too hard, so you're not even gonna try? You're just gonna give up on whatever it is that you want because it's too hard. Who cares if it's too hard? It doesn't mean that you can't do it. And it being hard doesn't mean that it's impossible. Think about it. Any and every day there are people who do hard things. And you yourself have done plenty of hard things in the past before. So just because it's hard doesn't mean it can't be done. And the hard that we photographers and creatives deal with is probably much easier than what other people deal with. So if you're gonna use this excuse, you might as well stop wanting things in the first place. Because saying you want to do something and then saying, oh, but it's too hard, can be quite annoying to other people. Like, what do you expect this other person to say? Do you expect them to give you some sort of sympathy that what you're doing is so hard? Or do you expect them to come up with a solution to make your life easier? A solution you probably won't take anyways because it's too hard. So stop complaining about the price. You're the one who wants to do whatever creative thing you want to do. You can't say you want something and then complain about how much it costs, aka the work you have to put in. I mean, I guess you can technically, but it's a pretty ineffective way of going about it. So finally, let's sum this all up. Here are 8 excuses photographers and creatives need to stop making today, and 8 better things to say instead. 1. If I had this, I'd be better. If I had this, it'd be easier. But you don't, so who cares? Take whatever imperfect action it takes using whatever imperfect tool you have now. Because chances are you have everything you need right now. So a better phrase to say is, I don't have this, but I'm gonna do it anyways using whatever I have right now. 2. I can't, I don't know how to. You don't know how to do it? Time to learn. Because the world was built on the backs of people who didn't know how to do shit. But they figured it out and made it happen, and you can too. So instead of saying that, say, I don't know how to, but I'm gonna learn. 3. They're lucky, I'm not. They have this that I don't, they've got money that I don't. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, and people are born with stuff they didn't earn. That's how it works. So you can either get up and play your hand the best you can or choose to lose by default just because your cards suck. It's your choice. Better phrase? Yeah, they're pretty lucky, but I'm pretty lucky too. Look at the cards I have. Someone's probably thinking about how lucky I am. 4. This person doesn't, so I shouldn't. If you're ever tempted to say, well, they don't, stop yourself real fast. Because you're not that person and you can't get away with the same things they do. It's better to assume you're untalented and unlucky so you put the effort in. So instead say, they won't, but I will. 5. I'm lazy, unmotivated, uninspired, don't feel like it. You're lazy, so what? I'm lazy too. I do it anyways. If you're lazy today, you'll be lazy tomorrow, and you'll be lazy forever, and you'll never do anything. That sounds like a pretty bad way to spend our time, waiting for things to happen. Instead say, I'm lazy, but I can still do the thing. I'm gonna do it anyways. 6. There's no point, so why do anything? But in actuality, there doesn't need to be a point. You don't need a reason or incentive to do everything. You can do it simply just because. Because if there's no reason to do anything, there's no reason not to do anything. So instead say things like, the point is to do the thing, or it doesn't matter if there's a point or not, and then just do the thing and be on your way. 7. It's not realistic. Art as a career or way to make money is scary. And because of that uncertainty, adults scare kids away from even trying to chase their dreams because it's quote unquote not realistic. But it is realistic, it's just hard. And anything worth getting in life is hard. So although it may be hard, if it's something you really want to do or enjoy, it may be worth it. So stop thinking about whether it's realistic or unrealistic and instead think about this. What is it I really want to do and am I willing to suffer for it? 8. It's too hard. If this is your line of defense in life, you're gonna have a bad time. Because life is hard, that's just the truth. So saying it's too hard doesn't help you in any way, it just makes you feel helpless. Better things to say would be, it's hard but it'll be worth it. It's hard but I can do it. It's hard but I've done plenty of hard things before. And it's hard because I've gotten better and life has given me a new challenge or new level to overcome. So there it is. It was a lot, I know, but I hope you found something in here that'll help you in photography, creativity, and just life in general. If you'd like to learn more about photography specifically, check out Photography Essentials. It's free. And you can also help support me by grabbing a copy of my latest photography zine, The Sinking Sun. Thanks for watching as always. Have a great day. Good luck. Bye.